Hello and welcome everyone to Skinworks. I'm John Uriarte, curator of digital programs at the Photographers Gallery. Skinwork is a program or fortnightly live streams launched by Fotomuseum Winterthur in Switzerland and the Photographers Gallery in London, supported by Promethean. Every 2 weeks, we invite artists, researchers, or curators to take over our screens, to visit the space where their artistic practice takes place and share the work process behind it. Each event has a different format and takes the audience into a particular digital space. Some skinwalks have been quite performative, some others have taken us through the desktops of artists, others have turned into collaborative online happenings. If you have missed any of the previous events, please please visit our website, skinworks.com, or our YouTube channel to watch the video recordings. Some housekeeping information now. Your microphone should be muted to avoid noise disturbances. If that's not the case, please mute them now. And as I just mentioned, we are recording and we'll be archiving this event. So please turn off your camera if you don't want to be recorded. Please use the public chat to send any question or alternative message that you want to send to Marco or to myself. Yeah, I think that's all for me for now. Marco?
Hello, so from my side, my name is Marco De Mutis. I am digital curator at Fotomuseum Winterthur in Switzerland. Today, we are looking at drones and drone vision as one particular form of computational and network image production that has shaped our gaze, connected to both photographic and cinematic ways of seeing, but also to surveillance and military forms of extending our vision through remote visual capture. Aerophotography has a long history that goes back to the 19th century, with photographer Nadar taking pictures from a hot air balloon as early as 1858. But aerophotography became a crucial military advantage during World War I, with cameras equipped on all manners of aircraft, giving birth to the wartime practice of aerial reconnaissance. After World War II, photographic satellites and unmanned aerial photography were developed, used for surveillance, weather forecasting, and more. Finally, in the 1980s, the first modern-style drones began to appear, with Israeli engineers creating models equipped with video cameras to monitor persons of interest for hours at a time. This technology was soon adopted by the US, who developed a remote control Pioneer drone, which filmed Iraqi soldiers surrendering to it during the first Gulf War. Now, since the early 2000s, drones have become more accessible and used by hobbyists, as well as professional filmmakers and photographers. With increasingly higher resolution cameras, stabilizing and collision detection systems, which have allowed the mass proliferation of drone vision as a specific aesthetic. Connected in real time with the drone operator, the live feed of the camera provides a disembodied experience that extends our vision to an otherwise impossible perspective and context. The drone camera is also an example of computational vision, with software that often analyzes and detects objects and people through algorithmic forms of image processes. And it's within this context of machine vision and the negotiation of human and non-human ways of seeing that Florian Amoser works with drones and other ways of seeing. Tonight, we'll be taken through a tour of his practice and the recent process of working with drone vision for a live audiovisual performance with his collaborator and designer, Pietro Alberti, with the hurdles and obstacles of working with flying cameras, and we learn about the risks of Swiss Alps sublime distracting the pilot from flight control, and much more. But let's get to it, because I know Florian is eager to start flying, and the weather and technology are unstable as usual. So dear Florian, thanks for accepting our invitation. The screen is yours.
Thank you so much, John and Marco. I'm here with Pietro Alberti. We're going to do the performance today. Thanks a lot also, Aria, for being here as a backup with John. And John, not bad for making it. And thanks a lot for your format here that brought us all through the pandemic. And it's cool that this is also continuing when now the times get a bit more normal. I'm going to switch for a second my camera away. So we're going to have my presentation. And very first, quickly the structure. So basically, I'm going to speak, as Marco said, about how I got into using drones. We're going to do a work in progress presentation with this drone symphony audiovisual performance, and we're going to do a demo of it. We're not in the Alps now for a very simple reason that it's currently, there was a storm over the last 3 days in Switzerland, and in the Alps, there's like wind gusts of 50 kilometers an hour. So we're in a bit more normal place, but I think it's going to be quite nice. And we're actually going to start from the back, the presentation, because it's already 7 here, and it's slowly getting darker, and the weather hasn't been very stable. Now it looks like not raining, so I would propose we would start first with the demo, and then we come back afterwards explaining everything, how we ended up here. And then of course also prepare questions if you have comments and stuff. We're super eager to hear. I'm going to do one last slide, which actually is this super sophisticated drawing of what you're actually looking at. On your right side, you see the drone in the sky, and then this has like a video link and a radio control link to me. I'm this little guy on the right of the two guys controlling the drone. The drone is not like these like DJI camera drones. It's close to these like race drones that have very little assistance. So it's a bit more like flying a helicopter than flying a robot in the sky. So it doesn't hold position, it doesn't hold height. It's a bit more involved, but it makes also for a very smooth experience. And then this image that I get in the video goggles, it's going to be piped into a computer, and Pietro is actually seeing the video in live, and then plays synthesizer an ambient track to it. And this then gets mangled together and beamed up to you in the ScreenWalk cloud. And the idea behind is a bit this out of body experience. We're going to go more into detail how we ended up here, but meandering through this place around here and experience it. So we're going to do probably around 10 minutes if the weather's not change. There's always a possibility that I crash. If it's so, we're just going to assume it, and we're going to continue and going to get the drone later, so no worries. And it's probably going to take like 30 seconds now to switch over to a different computer. Maybe a minute. Marco can make some elevator music maybe. And we see you back over there, and then we're going to come back to this computer after the performance.
Okay, so now I feel like I have to sing some elevator music, but I was not prepared. But maybe just a couple of things while we wait. So for the technical setup, because John and I have been testing in the past week or so, and I think with Florian, and this has been one of the most challenging technically screen walks to prepare, because of course there's so many variables. And Florian will tell us more about crashing, but as you might have understood from what he said, there's been some attempts that failed in which the drone kind of lost control. And
yeah, but let's take it as a screen walk as most of the screen walks that we have hosted, which is like more about the process of making a work, and in this case also dealing with all the issues that working outdoors brings to this kind of project. So you have the weather, you have like the connection also outdoors, and all these like issues, like potential issues that you cannot control. So
right, and I think once again, as we've seen in previous screen walks, I think this idea of the failures, the attempts, the problems also reveal many of these processes, as we've seen also starting from the diagram that takes this image to the screen, right? Like so many different processes of mediation, these processes of like networking an image, and then of course in this case like piloting a drone. So a very ambitious screen walk today. So I also would like to encourage everyone to support Florian and Pietro in this first flying screen walk that we've had. And yeah, So hopefully the weather and the conditions will allow us to have a taste of what their larger project will be.
So there I can see
an image appearing.
Hold on. I think that we can already add it. Yeah. Okay, so I think that what we are seeing now is like the view from the drone.
Yes, so Florian, I think the Zoom account from the drone view is muted, so maybe that's something that still needs to be set up. So just a couple of moments. Those clouds don't look good.
Oh yeah, you have to unmute the other computer. So the account Florian.
So in the meantime, Mark from the chat is sending the good luck.
So
that was not planned. Incredible.
Can you, Florian, can
Yes.
you please explain us what has happened? Maybe the drone has lost contact.
They're gonna try to get it. Yes, I mean the thing is, we lost contact with the like visual system, which basically it's very dependent on also like water in the air stops like the radio waves, and it's very limited. Like we did a test together, John and Marco, exactly here, and we did exactly the same, and there was no issue at all. So yeah, it's sometimes I don't know fully what happened now.
Is it raining now?
No, but it's very damp. So before it was nearly raining. We had some drops on the keyboards before. I would propose that I just continue with the presentation. They try to catch the drone, and if everything works out, we try to do it again. That's how it is. Give me 2 seconds.
It's a 3-man operation.
So this is exactly what we were trying to explain before, that things might happen and issues might happen, and we are just trying to fix them while they're happening. In fact, we can see them back there. I guess that going to recover the drone on the field that I guess that it like went down.
So
yes,
stuff goes always as expected. Holy moly. I'm very sorry about this.
no worries.
Yeah. So now my joke with let's continue with this presentation. That would have been us. And basically, we're going to continue now with the two parts. How I got into this, and it's actually, I think it's maybe the better demo like this. It's not very nice, but it's actually stuff that just happens when working with drones. Basically, my work turns a lot around perception, and I try to somehow research human perception and especially like visual perception. This here is like a 4x5 camera on this little platform floating in a river that's called Talent. The river is really called Talent. And it's actually, it was an image I did in the night, and it was focusing on a little light in the distance, and it was capturing through that the sort of movement of the river. And to be honest, I'm not going to show you the image now, because actually the imagination of the image is nearly better than the image itself. And I'm quite interested in turning myself around and look at the sort of reality of production. So this was also a bit of reality now. And my work turns around this idea of sort of photography is everywhere. And I often like perceive places, or I watch a video of, I don't know, mountain biking more on YouTube than I do it myself. It's just like it is. And so suddenly the image of it becomes the reality, and not especially the reality itself is the reality. And so suddenly the camera plays a really important role in this chain of perception. And so every change in the camera changes something as well in how we perceive our surroundings and our spaces and places and things. And so I started a bit through this more building stuff. This was actually the first time I built something with a drone. I put it here as well with not much comment. It's basically one of these like reporter flashes mounted below a drone that I could trigger remotely in the night. And it's more to show that I think this way of like building your own things is actually quite political, and especially in a world where like more stuff is glued together, to unscrew things and to look inside it and build it yourself is actually super intriguing still, even though I'm totally clear on it that like commercial like drones for video, for instance, are incredibly powerful and very productive, and it's very easy to use them, but it's also a bit boring. So it's often this case of when technology becomes boring, it becomes very productive. And so through this, I have also this interest like in this chain of how photography changed and how we perceive our surroundings. I think computational photography plays a huge role, because computational photography is that moment when your smartphone has a large capacity, or like it's mostly smartphones. Your camera has a large capacity to calculate things for you while doing the image. And so suddenly it starts to take decisions that are like image making decisions for you without you realizing. And one of the simplest like approachable tools like this is the smartphone that we all have in our pocket. And so this was a sort of first box that I built. On the left side, you see like the box open. It's just plain cardboard, and you slide your iPhone in there, and the little black thing in the lower part is actually a camera that filmed the screen of the iPhone in the panoramic mode. So I had a feedback on what actually the camera was seeing, because this thing goes below a drone. And on the right side, you see this little white lever. that is on a servo, which is like a little motor that can move. And this was actually just physically pushing the camera side button, the volume button to take the picture. And through this, I tried to sort of expose the world to the camera and show the world to the camera to see what comes back. And this is below a drone. You see this little part in the center that is actually a sort of disconnection, decoupling for the movement, because the drone, when it's flying, it like tilts left and right. And so you need to have some sort of motion decoupling, otherwise the camera just swings around. And this is then actually the view from the ground, which is very naive, but I quite like it. It's basically just a view of the screen of the iPhone that I was then using to at least get a sort of direction. And I started to expose this to and use this in the landscape. So I'm going to show, this is not really part of a project. That's just my research I did during like experimentation. And this is still very normal in a sense that it's just a rotation. So you could also do this from like a large tripod or maybe a hill that is next to it. But you already see slight glitches, and I'm always a bit skeptical about like glitches. But I realized that actually something is quite interesting. I can actually expose this camera in this panoramic mode to a situation that is optically not really possible. So what you see here is basically like the view, the pictorial space within the image. So on the left side, you see a normal image, and you see sort of space that goes into the image afterwards. This little sphere is the point where the camera is, or the viewing, the eye of the viewer. And then it goes up to infinity. And in panoramic mode, it's quite interesting because you can move while it's doing its images. And suddenly it becomes a sort of sequence of viewpoints and a sort of multi-ocular point where your camera has been. And it's a situation that still, if the camera moves, infinity actually is a bit the same. So it has this very weird problem that about the parallax, the movement within the image, that changes differently. And so I started to try this, what happens, and this is basically just like experimentation, that it's basically stuff that fell off the truck. I didn't use that ever for anything, but I'm just showing it here, and you start to slowly see things happening. And this actually led up then, I'm going to jump a bit to the end product, to a project called Apparatic Spectacle. Apparatic is a bit a strange word, but it describes when something is like, it looks different than you know it is. So it is like a sort of, has two sides to it. And so for instance, the best example is it's a stick that you put in a glass of water. You know it's straight, but because of the refraction of the glass surface, you see that it's like, it looks like it's suddenly bent. And it was my diploma work at ECAL when I studied at ECAL. And so we jump forward to basically what the drone was doing, because it's drone first tonight. The black dot is basically where I started on the left side, the black dot. And then I flew to this white dot that was an entry of this flying figure. And then I programmed the drone that it was autonomously flying vertically and taking a picture in the panoramic mode. So it was in a sort scanning this architecture in front of the camera. And then it was repeatedly doing this. And the interesting thing, that's one part of the output, it's a sort of a bit Becher typology kind of display of 12 images that are 12 different images, but the underlying programming of the drone is always the same. And of course, here it's a sort of visualization of this thing. But at the same time, it also shows an underlying change in the camera, I think. In a normal traditional camera, and I count traditional camera both like a digital camera and an analog camera. You have sort of this chain of something gets photographed, you have a lens, the light comes through, it goes onto a photosensitive surface, and it's somehow registered as a latent image. And it's registered as a latent image in a sense that it's there, but it's not yet visible. It changed something. And I think even the data of a digital image somehow is similar, because it gets sorted through a straightforward algorithm to the end of image. But now in computational photography, you have a change that suddenly the data drops into a data set that then gets reconstructed, and that are much more involved processes that try to reconstruct an image for you to see. And so the little changes, I'm going to go next slide. The little changes, that's another series of images. The little changes within one data set or one capture to the other. And it could be here, it's the wind that blew around the drone, let the drone move. And that slightly captured another part of the landscape, which then resulted in slightly different material to reconstruct the image. And you really start to see the biases and the sort of how the thing works behind the scenes. And I also have to say something about what we're actually looking at. So these are ventilation chimneys of road tunnels in the Alps. This one here is in the Austrian Alps in Arlberg. And it's this nearly sort of Star Wars-like monumental architecture that they built in the landscape. And it's not really for anyone to see, but at the same time, it's a sort of sign of the importance of the infrastructure that is invisibly below it. So it's like a nearly sacral architecture. And then, of course, this here, it was not anymore just a cardboard box. It was much more. So I often, like, I'm not an engineer, but I'm quite good at playing one. But then that results often that stuff is a bit more visual than it should be and a bit less functional than it should be. So this was originally the plan for my sort of camera stabilizer that I was building for a smartphone, because I mean, no one has this idea to build or is stupid enough to produce a gimbal that has it's called gimbal, this thing, a camera stabilizer that has a camera that films its own screen, because no one needs that. Even though nowadays we see them like on every corner of like tourists use them, families use them, everyone there are like this camera stabilizer. And actually on the lower right side, you see the visual inspiration, which was actually the gyroscope of the first like intercontinental warheads. And it's not to make fun of it, but it's actually basically the same technology behind it. The gyroscope is like the piece in your smartphone that makes it know if it's tilted vertically or horizontal. And that thing got so small and so cheap that now they're basically everyone, but originally they were huge and very costly. And this one's then the final thing I built, which still had a sort of similar functioning as this first bit funky cardboard box. And for me, it's always one part is actually the result, but also the whole process is actually really interesting for me, because for instance, if you look on the right side, you have this schematic where you see at the lower end, you have the phone in these two shells that is put together. Then this white square in the back is the camera, and then you have the motors that actually make it actively tilt against the movements of the drone. But then also at the very top, you have this like two times three little pieces, and they're actually sort of little rubber grommets, because the drone vibrates a lot, and you really need to have a sort of decoupling of these vibrations. And it's actually quite interesting to me because vibrations, for instance, is something very physical, that is something very real. And these camera gimbals, for instance, they're sort of a way of disconnecting the physicality of the camera from the movements of a person or a drone. And so for the work, I went to different places in the Alps, and it's always also a bit a performative part, even though that's less visible. But going there, I think everyone that does photography knows this very well, that this is as much a part of it than the photography part as such. And this is another one. This is the San Bernardino Tunnel, a bit less sacral, but nevertheless quite interesting, because it shows actually that this whole process somehow flattens the perspective also. It redoubles the background at certain points, but it somehow is not understandable from the outside why and when. And it's very interesting, for instance, the floor at the bottom of the picture, we look on top of it, so it's a view from above. But then also the roof, we look above it. So it has this sort of nearly isometric perspective that comes out of it. And it's also a sort of function of time. It works a bit like a slit scan in a sense that because it starts at the bottom and flies to the top, there's actually a different time where the bottom has been recorded than the top. And this one is a different one. This is in close to the, it's basically the Gotthard road tunnel on the Italian speaking side of the Gotthard. And there's actually, that's the way the prints then were as a final product, and quite like this part that basically there's a sort of little note at the bottom that gives a sort of clue on the position, the precise position that results. So it's from 2 meters to 43 meters at these two waypoints. And it's actually the same waypoints for all the 12 pictures. Because it's just the sort of error or physicality of the thing that actually introduces some differentiation. And I put this in here because I think it's also important to look a bit closer at the images, because there's happening something that I think is more than just a simple visual glitch. You really start to see the image segmentation at work. You see parts that are blurred from vibration, possibly just to make stuff fit together. And you have moments where it's nearly becoming sort of a tilt shift perspective, where it's different sizes, and it's a sort of new visual matrix that come out of it. Now, how did I get into like this first person flying drones? They're back with the drone, by the way. Oh, it got dark in the meantime. We're not going to do a demo.
No,
no, we're not going to do a demo. Okay, we're going to share some more stuff afterwards. So I'm going to continue with the presentation for the time, and we check in afterwards. Here we are. So I'm super intrigued by sort of simulation and immersion, and how you can like I said, perceive different things. And drones are like a means of having these out-of-body experiences. Also is, for instance, VR. But I think it's very different when it's of a physical thing, even though VR can also have, for instance, photographic qualities. And so this was actually, I started documenting some guys in a forest in France, close to Geneva, and they were meeting up. That's like from, I think, 2016, 2016, I think 15, 16. They were meeting up every Saturday to fly their drones together with these glasses where they saw the image in the glasses. So this is very early technology, and it was super intriguing how what the experience was. And they also built these quite funny setups for like, that's like the antenna receiver receive the image. And they let me try actually, and I was really bad at it, and it was also quite scary because you have to first it's flying, it's a bit more complex than just a normal drone, but it's also you have to start looking with your fingers. So if you want to look left, you have to turn your drone instead of your head, and in the beginning that takes quite a bit. And if we go a few years forward, I think there's a risk that this video is a bit stuttery from what we saw while testing, but I hope you're still gonna get it. I'm just gonna let it run. So I started, especially for when doing hikes around Switzerland, I started to take a drone like this with me, and really started to become a sort of shared experience between us, that we could also explore places around the place that we were hiking. And also like this, for instance, is a wall somewhere in the Alps that is actually not accessible. You can't even climb it because it's so fragile. And so we had great fun exploring it with a drone. And it's really, I saw that there was great value in sort of sharing this experience between us and sharing it in the moment. And this is sort of the starting point of what we try to show you today, which we failed slightly. I'm gonna let this run for another second. Back down now. And so from this, I'm super intrigued by sort of tableau photographic like this. We're not comparing us to these expeditions, but this here is an image from Bisson, brother Bisson. It's like French photographers from the 1860s. And they did this, like, they were the first ones that took a picture on top of the Mont Blanc, which is like the highest mountain of the Alps. And they had 25 people with them. Of course, they had a whole different story. To get over it, basically, they had to first build up tents to build their own dark rooms at every spot, and then melt water and do their plates and so on. And I think it's quite interesting then the image that they made, because it's still now it has this incredible quality. But actually, if I look at the picture, I think doing this today is not the right thing. Also formally, it would be actually incredibly interesting if we could go through these little crevasses, like these little cuts and cliffs, and actually go look at it. And it's basically what I do when I look at these kind of pictures. It's a sort of, you project yourself in there. You have a sort of empathic reaction to this imagination of being there and what they must have endured. And the idea behind this drone walk is a bit this, that we drone walk, now I start to rename it drone symphony thing, that we can sort of share this experience of a place. And so now, yeah, it's the third part. And I think you understood, that was meant as an early joke, the hardware is hard, but I think you understood it already by now. So this is the work in progress. We had a similar experience last week, actually. We went in the Alps on a bit nicer day than today, with a lot of equipment. It's always quite a work just to get all your stuff up there. Especially also just because you need a lot of battery, you need batteries for computers, you need batteries to charge batteries for drones and so on. And so it's quite also a physical experience, but that also plays into it actually. And I think it's quite interesting, this sort of adventure to go to this place, and that adds up to it. This is us walking up. It's in the Bernese Alps, in a valley called Gasterntal. And so that was a sort of expedition for us to really try it for real. This is the moment when you come up, actually. It's this incredible view of a glacier. Quite disturbing if you are close by. I don't know if you've ever been in front of a glacier, because they're moving so quickly backwards nowadays that often, at least in Switzerland, scientists put on marks on the ground where it was like a year ago, 2 years ago, and it's quite disturbing. And so that was us unpacking, and we were already a bit tired after 3 hours of walking up with like 15 kilos on the back. But then we started trying out, and we set up all the infrastructure, and it happened a bit a similar thing than today. I'm going to share this. It's basically my first flight up there, and it was really just to get a bit of feel of the space and the surroundings of around me. I'm not going to really talk to it. It's about a minute here that I'm sharing. Yeah, that's not what you want to see. And actually, it happened to me a bit. It was not a technical issue here. Actually, it was totally my fault. And it's a bit a hard thing to share, honestly. Here, it's sort of, that's the last thing I saw. And I'm going to quickly explain it. It's basically, yeah, awesome glitch. Yeah, thanks. But it's not the glitch you want to see, because it basically, this last ridge that we saw, I was diving behind it because I got carried away by the sheer beauty of the place, and it was working really well. And so by the moment I turned around and dropped a bit below, you go actually in a sort of danger zone, because it's beyond the direct connection. And you actually just lose very quickly the video signal. And if you don't see anything, you can't control it. And so, yeah, after like 3 hours of walking up, we did 2 minutes of flying, and that was it. And that was quite a hard thing. And that's also, I mean, I think you got it already before. Hardware is hard. I'm also gonna say a quick thing, even though you got like a few seconds of it. I'm really sorry about this. That's basically the setup that we use, or that Pietro started to set up. He's a sort of coder by day and nerd by night. So he's programming this synthesizer to do an ambient track to it. And he also started to build his own tools to help him with the live performances, sort of controlling the patches through Node.js and reverse engineering the MIDI packages to get a bit more direct access to it, and adding a sort of additional dimension to the experience. And I mean, this just as a few names of people that have like really inspired us. Helen Vogelsinger, Jan Tiersen, of course, that also they work a lot in specific places. Ivo Malek, Thierry Riley. It's very incredible work. We're of course not at all at this state, but it's a sort of, it's really good inspiration. And of course, you cannot do a presentation without a screenshot from Blade Runner. And so this somehow plays also into it, of course, this sort of flying experience. And then of course the soundscape by Vangelis. And I'm gonna end this thing with that video here. That was us last week, about 3 hours later on this very mountain ridge. And that's then the bit, the hardware is hard part. Yeah, it was across the valley and we had to get down because there was a sort of cliff in between us and this place. So we had to get down with all the equipment 200 meters down and then back up on the other side. And yeah, luckily, yeah, that's me speaking French with a very strong Swiss German accent. Luckily, we had this last image, so we knew sort of what area it dropped, and we thought like, we can't leave it out there. We don't want to leave it out there. So let's at least try to get over there. I'm going to fast forward a bit. And there's actually a little beeper on the drone. And that little beeper helps actually in a situation like this, because after 3 hours, the battery is dead. So you don't have any signal anymore. And so this beeper has its own little battery and it just beeps with like 100 decibel. And so from up here, we started to hear it and we knew a bit what direction. And actually, Pietro just told me today, but it dropped actually onto a little patch of grass. And it was quite incredible how lucky we got. I'm gonna fast forward a bit to the valley. Actually, the view from up here is absolutely incredible. And yeah, I'm really sorry that we can't share this video because it hasn't been possible to make it. And so here it's basically, after then 6 hours of walking, we have the drone at least back. We were quite happy about this. That's, by the way, this little drone. It's a really small one. It's very efficient. The battery took the whole hit, so it totally exploded. But at least we got it back. And it's also a bit interesting because it's a bit the reality of production in this kind of work. That sort of in photography, often actually the error gives a bit of charm to the image and it somehow adds something. But the moment you work in this very like technical context, it actually, the error doesn't add anything. I mean, it can add to an image, but often it just adds to the project not working. And I'm very sorry that I think now it got really dark. I think we're not going to repeat the performance now. Also, I tried the drone. It seemed to not have taken a big hit from this crash that we did in the Alps. But I think maybe the antenna took actually a bigger hit than I thought, because we were flying literally here last Thursday with John and Marco, and there was no issue at all.
So, even if it hasn't like worked this time, can you maybe explain a little bit how, like, what you were planning with performance? What was the plan?
So the plan basically is a sort of exploration of the space around us. So we usually we fly around the space a bit to understand it, because it's the moment you're on top of trees and you're on top of a mountain or on a ridge, it can quickly look very different than from what your viewpoint is from here. So the idea really is a very sort of playful, immersive thing that you could just watch and enjoy.
in fact, with Marco, while you were doing the presentation, we were talking about like if you are up to it, if you record it or you do the performance at some other point to publish it on the Skinwalks YouTube or Twitch channel whenever that's ready. So
we would totally
yeah.
love to do it. So I just stopped speaking before because my battery is actually running out. Pietro is getting another battery. We're somewhere in nowhere doing a screen walk. It's quite funny. Around us it's just dark. We're somewhere at the corner of a field.
Thank you so much thank you for accepting the challenge of going to nowhere, as you said, to perform the skin walk. It's the first outdoors, or not like completely outdoors, but yeah, it's like the first one in the middle of
probably
nature.
Also the last one after this experience.
So also I want to thank you from my side, and I think also I've seen reaction in the chat with a lot of like support, because I just want everybody to realize that Florian and Pietro and like this whole team of people is out in the middle of nowhere. It's dark now, probably wolves are gonna come, and basically this whole idea started, of course, with an experiment, and we're always very, very excited about trying things out. So even, like this vision that you have of creating like either live or a video drone symphony would be something that, of course, we would be more than happy to support in the future in whatever way we can with Screenwalks. Unfortunately, we have this like, consistent Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Central European time, which is really tricky at this time of the year. But of course, we can also find other solutions, because of course we want to support you and see the project realized. Also, yeah, knowing like how much effort it takes to go up like this, it's really like also this romantic notion of just like the photographer that you showed from the 19th century, right? It's like, but now it's like this drone climber going up for 6 hours with the gear and everything. So thanks a lot.
I was also wondering if you could, like, when we did the test, I remember that it was pretty interesting, and like you made it pretty clear, like this feeling of feeling like disembodied when using the Googles, when flying like on first-person view, let's say, and that's maybe something that not many people knows about. So, like, if you could explain a little bit about that experience of using the Googles to drive the drone, and how does it feel?
It's actually it's super immersive, but then at the same time you have to imagine that it's only 2D, so you have the same image on both eyes. So compared to, for instance, VR, where you really have the binocular vision, like stereo vision, that lowers it a bit. But it's a very, especially when you fly yourself, it's really like sort of, you start to walk with your finger, because you can start look around and really move. It becomes very natural. You start to look around, like in VR, it's very it's very normal that you turn your head if you want to look around, because you know how this works in reality. You start to look around with your finger, and you can, and it's really just sort of exploring the top of hills and mountains and trees, and very simple things become suddenly extremely intriguing. And it sounds super cheesy, but this thing of sort of imagining the view of a bird is actually, it's basically this. It's really, you can go somewhere, stay there, look down, turn around. Yeah, it's totally digital. Actually, you have a great crowd, by the way. I love Screenwalk crowd. It's really nice, these comments on the bottom.
I think you already have a few
popping
fans,
up
actually.
on the bottom. And it's really, if you ever get the chance, I mean, I'm based in Switzerland, so if at some point something happens more physical, I'm also super happy to share this view. It's not exactly the same if you don't control it yourself, because I think that is part of it. I think Marco and John saw it on Thursday on the test. It's even nearly hard to speak to it while you're doing it, because you have to be quite concentrated and really become one with it. And it's a very sort of physical experience, even though the whole thing is super technological and super quite sophisticated, and then also quite like sometimes hard to make it work. Yeah, maybe just to like your first question that you had, John, with a sort of how we do this these like performances. When we have explored the space, it's also something we did for here. We sort of start to draw maps and start to sort of, they're not nice, but they're sort of schematic, what parts can lead to what, and what are different places that look different or different enough. And then sort of trying to connect them, and Pietro start to somehow compose different things that somehow lead one to the other and support these different places. And then sort of follow through the whole thing and try to link this and make a sort of climax progression that works through it. I'm really sad about this thing, how this worked out.
Well, hopefully, I mean, while we wait, if there's more questions from the chat, I also want to ask, you know, if everybody also has, is interested in helping to realize this idea, feel free to reach out to Florian and Pietro or through us, so that, you know, we could make this, this project come to life. I don't know, actually, we were talking about whether this project should be a live performance, or rather, if you imagine it as some sort of like cinematic, like final video work. Have you thought more about it, or like now are you a bit discouraged by the possibility of doing it live and the hardness of the hardware?
I think there's a bit, yeah, of course it can be both, but I think it's a bit a question of like what is first, because it's also a bit the question of the limitation. If, for instance, in the mountains, you sometimes are really limited by just the network connection. Switzerland is quite good in that way, but it's still sometimes not at all there. And weather as well, yeah, of course, but weather is basically general an issue in photography. So I don't know, like I had this, like this morning, if you would have asked me this morning, I'm totally sure that it should be live, because I think there's a quality in it of seeing this like disconnected view. I can't read the whole question.
Don't worry, we'll get the question. Feel free to finish the
I was sure that this question's gonna come. Legal advice on drones. And a sort of, I think there really is something to seeing this distributed view from somewhere else live at your place. But then at the same time, I saw this now with this setup here with a very specific time, and like weather is a limitation. Honestly, like weather half an hour before we started was great, and then started slightly raining. And this is like this situation where I don't know yet how to make it. Maybe it's also something, a live performance that is at a specific place. So in a sort of, maybe even sort of, I don't know, landscape outdoors exhibition setting where you would actually show, maybe have a projection screen or something, and you would show what the drone sees, and we're flying at this, exploring a space while a crowd can watch it. Yeah, exactly. So,
okay, so yeah, well, sorry.
Yeah, go.
No, so I just wanted to maybe read one of the questions that also came in from Matthias. But I don't know, I was wondering if Pietro, you still can do some soundtrack if you want while Florian is answering the questions. That could also be something, since you have this amazing.
Sure,
The problem is that we already packed everything because
Okay,
we are afraid of the rain. So yeah.
So you can just hum it or sing it in the background while I read the
Okay,
question.
no, that's probably not a good idea.
But Matthias is asking, our
like-
neighbor sometimes flies a drone over the village and other neighbors get angry. What is the legal situation on flying over other people's property in Switzerland?
Matthias, are you in Switzerland?
Matthias is in Bavaria.
Germany. I mean, we're not EU, so it's Switzerland is quite slow legally, which is an advantage sometimes for this kind of trying things, but we're clearly in a legal context. So weight is a question. Generally over a village is usually not really possible. Over people is not really possible. So that's also why we're out here. We're doing it here. We're doing it not in the city, even though a city can be very nice. But then if you have an issue like this, you're going to drop onto people. So it's not fun. And yeah, I mean, in Switzerland, I know, for instance, for like professional drones, you have to ask a permit for every time from the police, and then you can fly over a city, but always with visual contact and within certain boundaries. But I mean, I don't know more about like a specific German situation.
Right, so we have the legal problem on top of the technical problems, on top of the weather problems, and on top of all these.
But generally, also, I think that's maybe a bit of thing also from my side. Go speak to these people, because it's actually something that is very intriguing that we have quite a bit. Also, when you're in the mountains, people are often reacting not very nice to drones, because I totally understand it. It gets me also angry if you're out in the nature, and this one is not very, it's not very noisy, this one, which is very nice. But I usually go there and show them the live feed, and it's so far there was no one that not get that slightly intrigued by it. So in a sense, it's also, I think drone pilots should a bit share this experience as well, because it's actually incredible.
It's an icebreaker.
Yeah, totally.
The new icebreaker instead of a pet, okay, got it. So everyone, please go get a drone and test it out, and also let us know how that goes. And I think on this note, unless anyone has other questions in the chat, we thank you once again for the immense efforts that you have sustained, and for the incredible physical hardships and the technical experimentations and all of that you have done, which was absolutely not in vain. And I think it actually was a super interesting way to show all of these processes that go behind your work.
Yeah, and there's time, and I'm pretty sure that we will find the opportunity and the way to make it happen and to share it with our audience. So like I think it's also nice to show how these things work and how hard they are.
How they don't work.
How they don't work. Yeah, both sides. It is true that many times all like drone related imagery looks like quite high end and perfect, and this kind of like real live situations that are not shared. So I think it's pretty good that we have shared also this experience. So yeah, thank you also from my side to all the team there in nowhere in Switzerland, and thank you also to everyone who has joined, to our audience who has joined the event.
We are back in 2 weeks. On the 20th of October, we're back with Petra Zeman, who's an amazing artist, and we'll show her incredible process that mixes photography, cinema, animation, game language, and talks about identity and many other issues. So stay tuned and come back for their next Screenwalk. So thanks again, everyone. Thanks, Florian, Pietro, all the team, and thank you all for joining.